Hello YouTube, in today's video we're gonna be reacting to Malice's Season 13 Jungle and Item Guide to either learn some things or just comment on some of the changes to see if I agree or disagree with Malice. So let's start.
I will be going over the new smites that got introduced this preseason, which are Red Smite, Blue Smite and Green Smite. Keep in mind you will not complete your smite upgrade or get their unique bonuses until around 12 to 16 minutes. Red Smite
that's
at its current
about
stage
right.
should be purchased very rarely to never due to how weak it is compared to the other smites. If you want the math, by the time you complete it around 14 minutes, you will do roughly 50 damage to a Karma support over 4 seconds with its proc, which is very weak in comparison to the advantages provided by the other two smites.
I agree, Red Smite is by far the worst.
In general on champions that utilize this blue very poorly. For example, Zac or Jarvan has little to no use from Blue Smite. Green Smite is good versus CC heavy comps and is something almost every jungler can utilize and provides safety near engages or ganks where the enemies have CC, or if you're caught off guard it might just save your life. If you're not comfortable getting a lead with Blue Smite, Green is a very safe option that works for everyone. Blue Smite is the king out of all three smites and will remain so unless heavy changes are added. Movement speed is the best stat for most junglers, and compared to the other two, this one has the highest chance of changing the outcome of the game in your favor. And this time, you don't have to sacrifice anything in order to gain a permanent mini ghost at minute 14 until the end of the game. This will aid you in invades, engages, disengages, chases, tempo, ganks, counter ganks, rotation, and the list goes on. Even versus CC heavy teams, if you are playing a dashless champion such as Udyr or Dr. Mundo that require movement speed to stick to the enemy, unless you're getting 100 to 0 in a combo, I would still take blue. Blue Smite also has something I call the Udyr effect. With the movement speed advantage you have over the enemy, you are the one in control and have the option to select what fights to take and what fights not to. You always have the ability to leave or chase, which is very big since one kill or one death can single-handedly change the outcome of a game. My conclusion is, Blue Smite will increase your win rate the most, scales with your skill, pathing and tempo, while Green Smite provides safety and is never a bad option, just might not be the best one. Whereas Red Smite at its current state needs to be buffed to even be considered.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'll probably rate Green Smite a little bit higher, but...
Ravenous Hydra. This item at its current state is way too overpowered. I don't think it's worth commenting on as
this item's broken.
Multiple times, and I'll get back to it then. Yaksho. A very good
this item also very broken.
Resistances as opposed to previous tank mythics focusing on damage. This item works very well.
And this is despite both Hydra and Yaksho being slightly nerfed. I still think they are a little bit OP.
That have enough damage with one item. So for example, Bork into Yaksho will have plenty of damage while being very tanky. It also has a good mythic passive granting you both armor and MR for every item you complete. Heartsteel. Situationally good on
this one is pretty good as well. I wouldn't say it's OP, but it's a solid item.
Dr. Mundo, but even on him, I'd recommend getting Bami's first recall and completing this item after. Even champions that really value health, such as Shyvana, cannot realistically buy this as a jungler, as you need a damage item or you will clear way too slow.
I mean, Shyvana just wants either AP or AD. I think she wants
means you will get it around 15 to 20 minutes and you will end up with little to zero stacks in the late game deciding team fights.
It's good for top laners and it's good for like jungle, Diana, and some tank junglers.
Lily and Fiddlesticks can utilize this item very well, even by themselves.
Abyss Mask I haven't seen, so I'm actually interested to hear.
It becomes a very powerful item packed with a lot of stats. Iceborne Gauntlet. Good tank mythic versus full AD if you don't have sticking power.
Interesting that even if you're solo AP, Abyssal Mask could be considered to be bought just to increase your own AP damage, but obviously it's better with the more AP on your team that you have. Iceborne Gauntlet, I have not seen at all, I think.
This item is insane on Shyvana, but falls short on Yaksho and the resistances, so I would only recommend buying it if they're extremely AD heavy.
I'd rather buy it actually, to be honest.
This item is very good on Kassadin, as it is
Rarve is pretty good for mid laners, but it's quite limited. It's only useful for mages and mid in my opinion. Maybe top, but...
This item is also getting buffed in the next patch to come. Sunfire Cape. This item can be very
this one is very good with
such a cheap item, and Bami is a really good
like a second item basically.
For junglers apart from Zac, Sejuani or Dr. Mundo, I would not really consider it, but it has a simple build path with good
like Heartsteel and Sunfire.
Complete fast, as you can
first, second item is very good power spec.
Turbo Chem Tank. This item struggles very
I
hard
haven't
to
seen
compete
this
with
item at
other
all.
MR items due to how strong they are and how weak the Chem Tank is. There's unfortunately no scenario where this item is better than Maw, Force of Nature, or Spirit Visage. As an example of how bad this item is, here's a picture of Righteous Glory, and even this item was rarely built, even though it was a mirror with better stats and an active twice as strong. Randun. This is an item you should always compare to Frozen Heart as you share the rock.
This one is basically just if you play against crit, you buy it. If you don't play against crit and just attack-based champions, then you go Frozen Heart.
Haste and an insane attack speed slow passive. This item is better versus crit champs that care little about attack speed, such as Gangplank or Samira, but versus 2 or more auto attackers, Frozen Heart is still king. Although later on in the game, when crit champs hit 60 to 100% crit chance, this item has a lot of raw power and can almost be a straight up 20% damage reduction passive versus crit champions. This is my most frequent jungle start in Season 13, as it gives you an advantage over the enemy jungler without depending on a gank going in your favor. These are the pros and cons of a Raptor or Wolf jungle start. Pros: 1200 gold recall, natural XP advantage. You will be harder to track as they don't know where you start and your camp timers will be out of the ordinary. You will have an item advantage after your first recall at 430, meaning you will have better items on first dragon spawn. Abnormal gank timers, like a 440 top or bot gank or an
Also make it harder for enemy team to invade you or cheese you
usually result in a successful gank.
if he doesn't mention it.
Ending cleared buff means you get to choose which scuttle.
I haven't seen that many players do it though.
No leash required,
but I'll probably try
very
it.
good for most lanes. Invade response. For example, if the enemy jungle does a level 2 ready.
Yeah, I mean, there it is,
Since your
invade
lane did not
response.
leash, it gives them the option to push if you have to cross into his jungle. Whereas if they leash, they might get shoved in and you will get collapsed on by the enemy bot lane, which will either set you behind or completely remove you from the game. Cons: lower health on clear, slower level 4. Because of these reasons, you'll be at a disadvantage in terms of fighting level 4, whether it's ganking, counter-ganking, or skirmishing at scuttle, and is best to be avoided. This is why after the buff, you move to the opposite scuttle crab of the enemy jungler, unless you have very heavy prio with lanes ready to move. When should I not do this jungle start? Certain lanes need cover, and if you leave them out alone with no backup, they will either die or lose their advantage, for example Caitlyn Lux. If you have a high chance to kill a lane if you're there on time, and leashing does not hurt your other side like a Jhin lane. If you are playing champions that relies on ganking, skirmishing, or causing chaos to get their leads, rather than building one through clearing such as Elise, Rek'Sai, Kindred, Lee Sin, Nidalee, Graves, etc. If you are more of a supportive jungle that wins through getting your lanes ahead, such as Sejuani, Jarvan, or Zac. If you have matched up the fights a lot, especially soul lanes are easy to pick up kills on as they will both be low and use their cooldowns frequently. And if you're there at the right time, it'll almost always result in a successful gank.
So basically, my opinion from what I understand from it is if you're a very power farming or very heavy level 6 reliant jungler, you should start on either wolves or raptors. And if you are like a fighting jungler, you want to fight on lanes, you want to fight over Scuttlecrab, you want to invade, then you shouldn't do it. Then you should just do a standard red or blue buff clear. That is basically what I'm understanding from it. So champs that come to mind would be like Nocturne, because he really relies on level 6 Shyvana, Karthus, champs like this, I think will benefit from doing this type of clear.
I was going to do a champion tier list, but if I do it at this time, it will not be accurate for the start of Season 13, both due to item inflation such as pre-nerf Ravenous Hydra, and there is going to be a fair amount of buffs and nerfs to both jungle and champions, and predicting these will be very difficult. Because of this, I will just do a tier list among the champions I plan to play the most in Season 13, and they will be ranked amongst all junglers.
Udyr is very strong. Evelynn I don't see that much, but she did get a few small buffs, so she's probably quite strong, but I don't know if she's this strong. Hecarim is quite strong. He did get nerfed, so he's probably not as strong as he used to. Karthus, in my opinion, did get hit a little bit, so I don't think he is this strong. And Shyvana I haven't seen at all, and I don't personally believe that this champion is this strong. But yeah.
Both in controlled environment and solo queue.
We'll just skip through this, but here are the Evelynn setup, in case you're interested. Karthus setup if you're interested. Udyr setup if you're interested. And here we go.
That usually adds up to 500 combined.
Oh, we're still talking about Udyr.
Makes him, in my opinion, the strongest jungler in the game.
Yeah, and then here we have the Shyvana setup.
With the new items and dragons being
and Hecarim setup. Here we get to conclusion.
At first, I was not a big fan of the changes, since you could just auto
Me neither.
your way through jungle.
The jungle change
but
sucked.
Now, jungle camps not only hurt, but their health scales very hard and your damage needs to keep ramping or you will struggle very hard with just clearing a camp like Gromp. Wolf/Raptor start on champions that could not previously do it is very nice, as champions with really weak early games such as Shyvana or Mordekaiser can now be rewarded by outpathing your opponent, rather than accepting that you will fall behind if you start on the same side as the enemy jungler. Picking champions for the reason of their early clear being very fast so you can intentionally start on the same side to path into your opponent that could not 6 camp, use your level 4 to 3 advantage for a double scuttle and build a lead of this is more or less dead. But you have more options now, and I find the new jungle changes overall being more healthy for the game. Certain junglers that lacked AoE abilities won't be gated on their first clear as hard, as you have a little bit of AoE, but
it feels nicer.
And as long
Trundle,
as your
all
jungle
these single target
number,
champions.
The changes are good, as I don't think Elise after a successful gank or invade should take 20 seconds clearing raptors, losing half her health, or only taking the big one and getting minimum value out of it, was necessarily good for the game. The last gold nerf to jungle kind of came out of nowhere, as junglers are the one that has to risk losing your gold and XP income to help laners, and are at a laner's mercy when they get invaded or take certain fights at objectives. Jungle always seems way more OP than it actually is in preseason, since on average players perform much worse, not feeling the need to play well because it's just
exactly,
which means most games will be above 20 kills at minute 10, and obviously Gold getting nerfed way further than it should be. Nerfing or buffing roles based on unhealthy gameplay will only result in straying further in that direction. Ravenous Hydra being as broken as it was on release also made it harder to balance jungle, as everything you touched, whether it was waves or camps, got one shot as well as healing you to full health in a second. Either way, I do like most of the jungle changes that happened in preseason so far once they tuned it. It allows every playstyle to flourish, and more diversity is never a bad step to take for a strategic game like League of Legends. This is the first guide amongst many.
So that's basically the end of the video. Pretty good video. I agreed with most of it. And a few things that I didn't really agree on were just, I didn't agree on the exact either position or in the tier list, for example. I would rate it a little bit differently. But for the most part, I agreed. So here are the jungle changes and item changes. Hopefully this will make you prepared for Season 13. If you enjoyed the video, remember to like. If you have any questions regarding Season 13 or jungle, leave in the comment section down below and I'll get back to you. Otherwise, subscribe to not miss out on future videos, and then I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.